The UAE state oil company ADNOC has been able to read emails to and from the Cop28 Climate Summit office and was consulted on how to respond to a media inquiry. This is a shocking revelation that exposes the conflict of interest and the lack of transparency in the organization of the UN Climate Summit, which will take place in November this year in Abu Dhabi. The president of Cop28 is Sultan Al Jaber, who is also the chief executive of ADNOC, one of the world's largest oil and gas companies. His dual role has been criticized by many climate experts and activists, who see it as a dangerous and inappropriate choice for leading the global efforts to tackle the climate crisis. But it gets worse. The Guardian newspaper reported that the Cop28 office shared email servers with ADNOC, meaning that the oil company had access to all the internal communications of the summit organizers. The Guardian also revealed that ADNOC was asked for advice on how to reply to a media inquiry about Al Jaber's controversial appointment. This is an absolute scandal that undermines the credibility and integrity of the Cop28 office and the UN climate body. It raises serious questions about how much influence the oil company has over the agenda and the outcomes of the summit. It also shows how the UAE, a major fossil fuel producer and exporter, is trying to greenwash its image and avoid accountability for its contribution to global warming. How can we trust that Cop28 will deliver ambitious and fair solutions for the climate emergency, when its president is also the head of an oil giant that profits from polluting the planet? How can we ensure that the voices and interests of the most vulnerable and affected communities are heard and respected, when an oil corporation is able to read and interfere with the summit's emails? This is unacceptable and outrageous. We demand that Al Jaber steps down as Cop28 president and that ADNOC is kicked out of the summit. We also call for an independent investigation into this breach of confidentiality and ethics. We need a Cop28 that is free from fossil fuel influence and that puts people and planet first. In this video, we will reveal how the UAE oil company spied on Cop28 climate talks. But first, let's take a look at who is leading the summit. The president of Cop28 is Sultan Al Jaber, who is also chief executive of ADNOC and the UAE's Minister for Industry and Advanced Technology. How can one man be in charge of both selling fossil fuels and tackling the climate crisis? Sultan Al Jaber has a controversial dual role. He heads ADNOC, one of the 10 largest oil producers in the world. The company aims to nearly double its output, but it also has access to the emails of the Cop28 office and was consulted on how to respond to media inquiries. This is a scandal that exposes the influence of the oil industry on the climate summit. But Sultan Al Jaber also chairs Masdar, a renewable energy firm that has invested in solar and wind power projects. He has pledged to make the UAE carbon neutral by 2050, though he has not explained how. He has also called for the phase-down of fossil fuels ahead of COP. Is he a climate champion or a greenwasher? The answer is not clear. But what is clear is that Sultan Al Jaber faces a conflict of interest that could undermine the credibility and effectiveness of COP. The summit is supposed to take stock of where countries are in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and delivering climate justice. But can we trust a president who is also an oil boss? In the next section, we will reveal how ADNOC spied on the climate talks and what it means for the future of our planet. Stay tuned for more shocking revelations. The dual role of Al Jaber has attracted strong criticism from lawmakers and environmentalists, who question his credibility and influence on the climate negotiations. Al Jaber is not only the president of Cop28, but also the chief executive of the UAE state oil company, ADNOC. This means he has access to confidential information and can shape the agenda of the summit to suit his interests. Some critics have called his appointment a scandal and a huge blow to the credibility of the UN's climate body. They argue that an oil executive should not be in charge of coordinating the phasing out of oil and gas. They also point out that Al Jaber has been inconsistent in his statements, promising to phase down fossil fuels while expanding oil production in the UAE. Others have urged Al Jaber to separate his roles and ensure transparency and accountability in his work. They have also asked him to fulfill his commitments to increase renewable energy, energy efficiency and clean hydrogen, as well as adaptation finance and loss and damage fund for vulnerable countries. They warn that if Al Jaber fails to deliver a game-changing outcome for international efforts to tackle climate change, he will face a backlash from civil society and the public.